I stood frozen at my own wedding reception as my sister's voice cut through the music like a knife. "This looks cheap. Did you actually pay for this?" Vanessa announced loudly, her designer heels clicking as she gestured around the decorated venue. Every conversation stopped. 50 guests turned to stare. My cheeks burned with humiliation as cameras captured the moment. I had spent months planning this day in Marigold Bay, choosing every detail with care. The simple white flowers, the handmade centerpieces, the string lights glowing softly overhead, everything reflected who I was. But to Vanessa, my older sister and a successful social media influencer, it was all just embarrassing. My throat tightened as murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it felt like it was crumbling around me. Then I felt Ethan's hand squeeze mine gently. My new husband leaned close and whispered in my ear, "Let her talk for now." Something in his voice made me pause. There was a calmness there, almost like he had been expecting this. Vanessa laughed and touched my shoulder, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Oh, Lena, I'm just joking. Can't you take a joke anymore?" She smiled for the cameras that some guests were still holding up. My maid of honor, Katie, stepped forward with her fists clenched. "That wasn't funny, Vanessa," she said sharply. But Vanessa just smirked and sipped her champagne, enjoying the attention. I watched her move through the crowd, whispering to guests, her perfectly styled hair catching the light. She had always been like this, beautiful, confident, and cruel when it suited her. Growing up, I had lived in her shadow. She got the attention, the praise, the money from our parents. I got the leftovers. People started whispering behind their hands. I saw some of them glancing at the decorations with new eyes, judging what they had thought was lovely moments before. My stomach twisted with anger and shame. Then I noticed Ethan was gone. I turned in a circle, searching the crowd. Where did he go? Guests began noticing too. "Where's the groom?" someone asked. I scanned the reception hall desperately, my heart pounding. Vanessa seized the opportunity immediately. She raised her voice so everyone could hear. "Even the groom ran from this bargain bin event," she said with a cruel laugh. A few people giggled nervously. I wanted to disappear. Katie grabbed my arm supportively, but I barely felt it. Then the lights flickered once, twice. The DJ stopped the music abruptly. The room fell into confused silence. My pulse raced as I wondered what was happening now. Was something wrong with the power? Suddenly, Ethan emerged from the back room, walking purposefully toward the center of the venue. He held a microphone in one hand and his phone in the other. His face was serious but calm. "Excuse me, everyone," he said clearly. "I have something important to share." All eyes turned to him. Vanessa's smirk faltered just slightly. I held my breath, having no idea what my husband was about to do. Ethan smiled at me warmly before turning to address our guests. "I've been working on something special for months," he announced, "a tribute to the woman I just married." A large screen lowered behind him, one I had thought was just for displaying photos later. The lights dimmed further. Music began to play softly. Then images filled the screen. There I was, volunteering at the local food bank last winter. Then footage of me helping build houses with Habitat for Humanity. More clips showed me organizing free events for elderly residents in Marigold Bay, teaching kids art classes on weekends, and spending my Saturdays at the animal shelter. Ethan's voice narrated over the images. "This is Lena's real wealth, not in things, but in the lives she touches." Tears filled my eyes as I watched myself on screen, doing the work I loved but never talked about. I had no idea Ethan had been documenting all of this. Then the final clip began to play, and my blood ran cold. It was Vanessa's voice, recorded from somewhere. Vanessa's voice echoed through the speakers, crystal clear. "Lena's wedding is going to look so cheap. I can't believe she's actually going through with that shabby little venue. It's embarrassing to even be associated with it." Gasps erupted throughout the room. I stared at the screen in shock. The recording continued. "She has no taste, no class. I'll have to post something to make sure my followers know I didn't help plan this disaster." Every word dripped with venom I had never heard directed at me so openly before. I turned to look at Vanessa. Her face had drained completely of color. Her mouth hung open in horror as she realized what was happening. The room had gone deadly silent, except for her recorded voice mocking me, mocking my choices, mocking everything I had worked so hard to create. Then Ethan's voice came through the speakers one final time. The best weddings aren't bought, they're built with love. The screen faded to black. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Vanessa let out a strangled sob and ran toward the exit, her heels clicking frantically. Ethan wrapped his arms around me as I stood there trembling. That night, I barely slept. Ethan held me as I cried tears of relief, anger, and confusion all mixed together. By morning, my phone was exploding with notifications. The wedding video had somehow made it online. Someone, probably one of our guests, had recorded Ethan's tribute and Vanessa's exposed words, then posted it everywhere. Within hours, it had spread across social media like wildfire. The hashtag #CheapTBeautiful was trending. Thousands of people were commenting, sharing their own stories of choosing meaning over money. My simple wedding was being celebrated by strangers around the world, but Vanessa's influencer empire was crumbling. I watched in stunned silence as her follower count dropped by thousands. Brands she worked with posted statements distancing themselves from her. Comments on her perfectly curated photos turned harsh and unforgiving. Katie called me, breathless with excitement. "Lena, you're everywhere. Everyone's on your side." I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hollow. Vanessa was still my sister. Then my phone buzzed with a new post from Vanessa's account. "You'll regret embarrassing me," it read simply. My stomach dropped. This wasn't over. 3 days later, my mother called. I almost didn't answer. "How could you humiliate your sister like that?" she demanded before I could even say hello. Not, "How are you?" or "Congratulations on your marriage." Just immediate anger. "Mom, she humiliated me first," I said quietly. "That was a joke. You're too sensitive, Lena. You always have been." Her words cut deep because I had heard them my entire life. Vanessa was the golden child who could do no wrong. I was the difficult one, the ungrateful one, the one who caused problems. We argued for 20 minutes before I finally hung up, my hands shaking. Old wounds felt fresh and raw again. Growing up, I had learned to stay quiet, to not make waves, to accept being second best. But something had shifted inside me. I wasn't that little girl anymore. That afternoon, I walked outside to get the mail. Among the usual bills and advertisements, I found a small cardboard box. It had no return address. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were dozens of torn photographs, pictures from my childhood, family vacations, birthday parties, all of them shredded into tiny pieces. My heart sank as I recognized them immediately. These were from the photo album I had kept at my old apartment, the one I had left at my mother's house for safekeeping during the wedding preparations. Someone had deliberately destroyed my memories. I knew it was Vanessa. I had spent 2 weeks planning a charity fundraiser to rebuild the community center in Marigold Bay. The event was supposed to happen in 3 days, with local businesses sponsoring tables and activities. I had secured permits, gathered volunteers, and lined up food vendors. Everything was perfect. Then I got the call. "Miss Hart, I'm sorry, but your permits have been revoked," the city official said uncomfortably. "We received a formal complaint about safety violations." My heart dropped. What violations? I followed every regulation. The complaint was anonymous, but it was very detailed. "We have no choice but to cancel until you can reapply and address the concerns." I spent the next hour on the phone trying to fix things. Then sponsors started calling. One by one, they withdrew their support, apologizing but offering no real explanation. By evening, the entire event had collapsed. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my laptop in disbelief. Ethan came home to find me with my head in my hands. "What happened?" he asked gently. I couldn't even speak. I just turned my laptop toward him, showing him the email trail. Then I noticed something in one of the forwarded messages, a small detail in the metadata that my event planning software had captured. The anonymous complaint had been filed from an email address I recognized. It was registered to Vanessa's business account. She had destroyed my event on purpose. A week later, Vanessa called me. Her voice was sweet, almost apologetic. "Lena, I think we need to talk, just the two of us." I didn't trust her for a second, but I was tired of fighting. Maybe she really did want to make peace. We agreed to meet at a small restaurant downtown, far from the crowds and cameras. Vanessa arrived looking perfect as always, though I noticed dark circles under her makeup. We ordered wine and sat in uncomfortable silence for a moment. Then she leaned forward. "I'm sorry about the wedding," she said softly. "I was jealous. You look so happy, and I don't know what came over me." The words sounded rehearsed. I wanted to believe her. "I know I've been difficult," she continued, "but I want to help you now. Your reputation took a hit from that video too, whether you realize it or not. Let me use my platform to rebrand your image. I know people. I can fix this." Something felt wrong. Her smile was too bright, her words too smooth. Under the table, I felt my phone vibrate. It was a text from Ethan. "Recording. Keep her talking." I kept my face neutral. Ethan must have suspected something and had hidden his phone nearby, capturing our conversation. So I asked carefully, "What did you mean by fix this?" And Vanessa, thinking she had won me over, began to talk freely about her plans and accidentally admitted to sabotaging my charity event. The recording leaked 2 days later. I never asked Ethan how it got online. Maybe he posted it, maybe someone else did. Either way, the damage was catastrophic for Vanessa. Her own voice, clear as day, admitting she had filed false complaints to destroy my event. "I had to teach her a lesson," she said on the recording. "She can't just embarrass me and get away with it." The internet exploded again. This time, there was no sympathy for Vanessa. Her remaining sponsors dropped her immediately. Comments flooded her posts calling her manipulative, toxic, a bully. News outlets picked up the story. "Influencer sabotages sister's charity event out of spite," read the headlines. I watched it all unfold with mixed emotions. Part of me felt vindicated, but part of me just felt sad. This was my sister, and she was destroying herself. Then Vanessa posted a video. Her face was puffy, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I made terrible mistakes," she sobbed. "I let jealousy control me. I'm seeking help and asking for forgiveness." The comments were divided. Some people believed her. Others called it another manipulation. Within days, her follower count started climbing again. People loved a redemption story. I realized that Vanessa knew exactly what she was doing. She was playing the victim now, and it was working. A local morning show invited me to speak about resilience and forgiveness. I almost said no, but Ethan encouraged me. "Tell your truth," he said. So I went. The hosts were warm and friendly. They asked about the wedding, about my charity work, about moving forward after family conflict. I spoke quietly but honestly. "I believe in second chances," I said, "but I also believe in protecting yourself from people who hurt you repeatedly." The audience clapped. I felt good, like maybe I was finally taking control of my own narrative. Then my phone rang on the desk beside me. The host glanced at it and smiled. "Should we answer?" It was live television, and the number showed it was Vanessa calling. My stomach twisted. The host picked up the phone before I could stop her and put it on speaker. "Hello?" Vanessa's voice came through, shaky but clear. "Lena, I'm glad I caught you. Since we're being honest on live television, maybe you should tell everyone what you're hiding." The studio went silent. My heart hammered in my chest. "Tell them about the money you stole from our father's inheritance," Vanessa said coldly. The hosts looked at me in shock. The cameras were still rolling. I felt my face flush hot. How did she know about that? The host stared at me, waiting for an answer. Vanessa's voice continued through the phone, gaining confidence. 4 years ago, when our father died, Lena took $20,000 from his estate before it was distributed. She never told anyone. She just took it. Murmurs rippled through the studio audience. I saw judgment flashing across faces. My hands trembled as I gripped the arms of my chair. It was true. I had taken that money. But Vanessa was only telling half the story, the half that made me look terrible. The host leaned forward carefully. "Lena, would you like to respond to this accusation?" I could have stayed silent. I could have walked off the set. But I was tired of Vanessa twisting the truth. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. "That's only half the truth," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The cameras zoomed in on my face. I took a deep breath and looked directly into the lens. "Yes, I took $20,000 from our father's inheritance without asking permission first." I paused, letting that sink in. I took it because Vanessa called me in the middle of the night, desperate and terrified. My voice grew stronger. She had developed a serious problem and needed help immediately. She begged me to keep it secret because she didn't want it to ruin her image. The studio was completely silent now. I used that money to pay for Vanessa's rehab, I said clearly. You could have heard a pin drop. On the phone, Vanessa made a strangled sound. Lena, don't. But I wasn't stopping now. Years of being silenced, of being blamed, of being less than, it all came pouring out. You called me crying at 2 a.m, I continued, my voice steady despite my shaking hands. You said you were scared and needed help. You made me promise not to tell Mom or anyone else because it would destroy your career. I turned to face the camera directly. So I took the money that was technically mine anyway. Dad had left us equal shares, and I paid for 30 days of residential treatment. I never asked you to pay me back. I never told anyone. The host sat frozen, clearly not expecting this turn. I looked at the phone where Vanessa's call was still connected. You got clean. You rebuilt your career, and I kept your secret for 4 years. My voice cracked slightly. Even when you treated me terribly, even when you mocked everything I did, I kept your secret because you were my sister. Silence stretched across the studio. Then Vanessa's voice came through, barely a whisper. She couldn't finish. The line went dead. The audience erupted into applause. The hosts looked at each other, then at me. One of them reached over and squeezed my hand. That was incredibly brave, she said softly. The clip went viral within hours. This time, the internet's reaction was unanimous and fierce. People who had been defending Vanessa moments before turned completely. She tried to expose her sister who saved her life, read one popular comment with thousands of likes. This is beyond toxic. This is evil. My phone rang constantly. News outlets wanted interviews. Supporters sent messages of encouragement. But I turned it all off and went home to Ethan. That evening, as we sat on our small porch watching the sunset over Marigold Bay, I finally felt like I could breathe. Then a courier arrived with a legal envelope. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a lawsuit. Vanessa was suing me for defamation, claiming I had damaged her reputation and career by revealing private medical information on live television. I read the document twice, hardly believing what I was seeing. The lawsuit sought $200,000 in damages. She's lost everything else, Ethan said quietly, reading over my shoulder. Now she's desperate. I should have been angry. Instead, I just felt tired. How had we gotten here? How had my sister become someone I didn't even recognize? My lawyer called that night. Don't worry, he said confidently. She doesn't have a case. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. But I worried anyway because I knew Vanessa. She always had another move planned. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Vanessa sat across the aisle with her lawyer, a sharp-looking woman who specialized in representing influencers and celebrities. Vanessa didn't look at me once. She wore a conservative dress, her hair pulled back simply, playing the role of the wronged victim. Our lawyers presented their cases. Vanessa's attorney painted me as vindictive, someone who had weaponized private information to destroy her client's career. Miss Hart violated her sister's medical privacy on live television, the lawyer argued passionately. She caused irreparable harm to my client's mental health and professional reputation. I sat still, trying to look calm even though my heart was racing. Then Ethan was called to testify. He walked to the stand with quiet confidence. Vanessa's lawyer questioned him aggressively, trying to paint him as part of a conspiracy against Vanessa. But Ethan remained unshakable. He explained calmly how he had witnessed Vanessa's cruelty, how he had only wanted to defend his wife. I simply showed the truth, he said. Vanessa's own words condemned her, not anything we fabricated. When it was my lawyer's turn, he stood and smiled slightly. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce new evidence. He pulled out a folder and that removed several pages. These are text messages from 4 years ago, sent from the defendant to my client. He began reading them aloud. Messages where Vanessa begged me to keep her secret, promised she'd be a better sister, thanked me for saving her life. But the most damaging evidence was a handwritten letter. My lawyer held it up for the judge to see. This letter was written by the defendant 3 years ago on the anniversary of her completing treatment. He began to read. Dear Lena, I know I don't say this enough, but thank you for saving my life. I was in a dark place, and you didn't judge me. You just helped. I'm sorry for how I've treated you over the years. You deserved better. You are the stronger sister, always have been. The courtroom was silent. I had forgotten about that letter. I had tucked it away in a drawer, never expecting to need it. Vanessa's face crumbled. Her lawyer whispered urgently to her, but Vanessa just shook her head. The judge reviewed all the evidence carefully. Then she removed her glasses and looked directly at Vanessa. "I'm dismissing this case," she said firmly. "The plaintiff's own written confession contradicts her claims. Furthermore, the truth of the statement is clearly established." She paused. "I'm also ordering the plaintiff to pay the defendant's legal fees." Vanessa stood abruptly and rushed from the courtroom without a word. Her lawyer gathered papers quickly and followed. I sat there feeling numb. I had won, but it felt hollow. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Ethan guided me through them to our car. As we drove away, I looked back to see Vanessa standing alone on the courthouse steps, looking lost and small. That was the last time I saw her, for 3 days at least. Days passed slowly. The legal victory should have brought relief, but instead, I felt anxious. Vanessa had disappeared from social media completely. Her accounts went silent. No posts, no stories, nothing. Our mother called, crying, "Have you heard from your sister? She's not answering her phone." "No, Mom, I haven't." "This is your fault," she said bitterly before hanging up. I tried not to let it hurt, but it did. On the 4th day, police came to my door. 2 officers stood on my porch, looking serious. "Miss Hart, we need to ask you some questions about your sister, Vanessa Hart." My blood ran cold. "What happened? Is she okay?" "We're not sure. Her car was found abandoned near the cliffs at Marigold Point yesterday evening. Her phone and purse were inside." The world tilted. Marigold Point was a beautiful spot overlooking the ocean, but the cliffs were steep and dangerous. "We're investigating all possibilities," the officer said carefully. "When did you last speak with her?" I told them about the courtroom, about the lawsuit, about everything. They took notes and asked if I knew of any places Vanessa might go. I couldn't think clearly. Despite everything she had done, she was still my sister. I didn't want her to be hurt. After the police left, I sat in stunned silence. Ethan held me while I cried. That night, a letter arrived. No return address, postmarked from 3 days ago. My hands shook as I recognized Vanessa's handwriting on the envelope. I opened the letter slowly, afraid of what I might find. Vanessa's handwriting was messy, not her usual careful script. "Lena," it began, "if you're reading this, you probably think I'm dead. Maybe I will be by the time you get this. I don't know yet." My heart hammered as I kept reading. "I've made so many mistakes. I destroyed everything good in my life because I couldn't stand seeing you happy. Do you know how sick that is? How twisted?" The letter went on, confessing years of jealousy and resentment. But then it took a darker turn. "There's something I never told you about Dad's death. Something I've carried alone for 3 years." My hands started shaking harder. "He didn't die of natural causes, Lena. The heart attack wasn't random." I read the words 3 times, not understanding. There was so much stress on him in those final months. The business was failing. There were investigations. People were threatening him. Then came the line that made my blood freeze. "Ethan knows. He was there. He was part of it." I looked up at Ethan, who was watching me with concern. "What does it say?" he asked. I couldn't speak. I just handed him the letter. I watched his face as he read, watched the color drain from his cheeks. "Lena, I can explain," he started. But I was already backing away, my mind spinning. What did Vanessa mean? What did my husband know about my father's death? I couldn't breathe. The room felt too small. Ethan reached for me, but I pulled away. "Tell me the truth," I demanded. "What does she mean you were there?" Ethan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them, they were filled with pain. "I was going to tell you. I didn't know how." "Tell me now." He sat down heavily on the couch. 5 years ago, before we met, I worked as a junior architect for a construction firm. We were contracted to work on a development project for your father's company. My father had owned a mid-sized construction business in Marigold Bay. I knew it had closed after he died, but I never knew the details. During the project, I discovered something wrong with the permits and inspections. Documents had been falsified. Safety regulations were being ignored. Ethan's voice was quiet but steady. "I found evidence that your father was knowingly cutting corners to save money, putting future residents at risk." The words hit me like physical blows. I wrestled with what to do for weeks, Ethan continued. I liked your father. He was kind to me, but people could have been hurt or killed in those buildings. So what did you do? I asked, though I was starting to understand. I reported it. I became the whistleblower. Tears filled his eyes. The investigation that followed destroyed his business and his reputation. The stress contributed to his heart attack 3 months later. I backed against the wall, my legs weak. You knew who I was when we met. No, Ethan said quickly. Lena, I swear. When I met you at that coffee shop 2 years ago, I had no idea you were his daughter. You go by your mother's maiden name, Hart. Your father's business name was Montgomery Construction. It was true. After the scandal, Mom had insisted we use her name to avoid the stigma. When did you realize? I asked, my voice hollow. 3 months into our relationship. You showed me a photo of your father, and I recognized him. Ethan's face was anguished. By then, I was already in love with you. I knew I should tell you, but I was terrified I'd lose you. You should have told me, I shouted, anger finally breaking through the shock. I needed to know. You're right, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He tried to approach me, but I held up my hand. My husband, the man I had just married, the man who had defended me so publicly, had been keeping this massive secret the entire time. Had our whole relationship been built on lies? Did you marry me out of guilt? I asked, the words bitter in my mouth. No, Lena, I love you. That's the only truth that matters. But I couldn't trust anything anymore. I grabbed my keys and left, ignoring Ethan calling after me. I drove without knowing where I was going, tears blurring my vision. My phone buzzed constantly, Ethan trying to reach me. Finally, another message came through. An unknown number. Vanessa's alive. She's in hiding. She sent me proof. If you want to find her, I can help. It was from a journalist who had been covering our story. The journalist gave me an address, a remote cottage 2 hours north of Marigold Bay. I drove through the night, my mind racing with everything that had happened. Nothing made sense anymore. I found the cottage just as dawn was breaking. It was tiny and isolated, surrounded by woods. My heart pounded as I knocked on the door. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, the door opened. Vanessa stood there, and I barely recognized her. She had lost weight, her hair was unwashed and pulled back messily, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. But she was alive. Lena, she whispered. We stared at each other. Then, without thinking, I stepped forward and hugged her. She felt fragile in my arms, so different from the confident influencer who had mocked my wedding. Inside, the cottage was sparse and cold. Vanessa made tea with shaking hands. We sat at a small wooden table. I'm sorry, she said finally, for everything. The wedding, the lawsuit, all of it. Why did you disappear? She looked down at her cup. Because they found me. Who found you? Vanessa's hands trembled harder. Dad's old business partners, the ones who helped him falsify those documents, the ones who went to prison because of the investigation. My stomach dropped. They got out 6 months ago, Vanessa continued. They blamed the whistleblower for destroying everything, and they blamed Dad for not protecting them. She looked at me with terrified eyes. They've been threatening me to stay quiet about what I know. They think I have evidence that could send them back to prison. I listened in growing horror as Vanessa explained. Dad kept backup files of everything, all the falsified documents, the payoffs, communications with the partners. He gave them to me a week before he died and told me to hide them. Why you? Because he knew I'd do anything to protect the family image. He thought I'd destroy them. Vanessa laughed bitterly. But I didn't. I kept them hidden, thinking maybe someday I'd need leverage. Where are they? She stood and went to a loose floorboard in the corner. She pried it up and reached inside, but her face went white. They're gone. She frantically searched the empty space. The drive was here yesterday. I swear it was here. My mind raced. Who else knew about this place? Who could have taken them? Then it hit me with horrible clarity. Ethan, I whispered. Vanessa looked at me. What? I pulled out my phone and called him. He answered on the first ring. Lena, where are you? I've been so worried. Where's the drive, Ethan? Silence on the other end. Lena, I can explain. Did you take it from Vanessa's hiding place? More silence. Then, yes. I felt sick. I had to, Ethan said urgently. Those files contain evidence of serious crimes. They need to go to the authorities. You've been following Vanessa? Following me? I was trying to protect you. Those men are dangerous, Lena. They've been threatening both of you. Where are you? I demanded. His voice was sad. With the police. I turned myself in an hour ago. Vanessa and I drove to the police station together in tense silence. Neither of us knew what to say. Everything was too complicated, too tangled. At the station, we were led to a small room where Ethan sat with two detectives. He looked exhausted, but relieved when he saw me. Lena, please let me explain everything. The detectives allowed him to speak. Ethan explained how he had discovered months ago that the men from Dad's old scandal had been released from prison. He had been quietly investigating threats against me and Vanessa. I married you because I love you, he said, looking directly at me. But I also felt responsible. My testimony sent your father into a spiral. I couldn't let his old partners hurt his daughters too. He had tracked Vanessa down to protect her, not harm her. When he realized she had the evidence drive, he knew he had to secure it before the men found her. I'm sorry I took it without asking, he said to Vanessa, but it was the only way to keep you safe. The detectives confirmed that the evidence on the drive had been crucial. They had already arrested the men that morning. One detective leaned forward. Mr. Reyes will face charges for withholding evidence and possibly breaking and entering. But given the circumstances and his cooperation, we expect minimal consequences. I looked at Ethan, really looked at him. He had made mistakes, kept secrets, but he had been trying to protect me the whole time. The news broke the next day. Construction fraud ring dismantled, original whistleblower's wife unknowingly at center of case. The media went crazy again, but this time the story was bigger than family drama. It was about justice, corruption, and redemption. Vanessa's name was cleared publicly. People who had condemned her felt differently once they understood she had been protecting evidence and living in fear. Ethan was formally charged but received a suspended sentence and community service. The judge noted his cooperation and the dangerous circumstances. You should have come forward sooner, the judge told him, but I understand why you didn't. Through it all, I visited Ethan every day. We talked for hours, slowly rebuilding trust. I should have told you everything from the beginning, he said during one visit. I was a coward. You were scared, I corrected. There's a difference. Vanessa started therapy and began making real amends. She posted a video, not for views or sympathy, but genuine accountability. I became someone I hated, she told her remaining followers. I'm going to do better, not for the cameras, but for myself. Mom finally called me. I've been a terrible mother to you, she said, crying. I favored Vanessa because she was easier, more successful, but you've always been the strong one. It wasn't a complete healing, but it was a start. 3 months later, Ethan came home. I met him at the door, and we held each other for a long time. I want to start over, I said. Really start over, with honesty this time. I'd like that, he replied. 1 year later, Ethan and I stood on the same beach in Marigold Bay where we had taken photos after our first wedding. This time, it was just the two of us, Vanessa, Katie, and a handful of close friends. No big reception, no cameras, no spectacle, just us. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Ethan took my hands. I promise to tell you the truth always, he said, his voice steady, even when it's hard, even when I'm scared. I promise to trust you, I replied, and to forgive you when you're human. We exchanged simple silver rings, nothing expensive or elaborate. As we kissed, I heard Vanessa clapping softly. She looked healthy now, her smile genuine instead of performed. After the ceremony, she hugged me tightly. Thank you for not giving up on me, she whispered. You're my sister, I said simply. I'll always love you, even when you make it difficult. We laughed, and it felt real. As Ethan and I walked along the beach, our feet in the sand, I thought about everything we had been through. The humiliation, the betrayal, the secrets, the healing. Someone called from behind us. Hey, was this wedding cheap too? It was Katie, grinning. I looked around at the simple beauty of the sunset, at my husband beside me, at the people who truly cared about us. Cheap? I called back, smiling. No, this was priceless.